But we'd like to turn our attention now to a very, very different structure, the opposite end of the spectrum from the Pentagon. It's Arlington's very own Lustron House, and it's having the summer vacation of a lifetime. Since July, the Lustron House has been enjoying an extended visit to the Big Apple.
Exhibition, for those of you who know MoMA well, brings back to the museum the tradition of exhibiting full-scale houses, which has not been done here since the 1940s and 1950s, when houses by Marcel Breuer, Gregory Ain, and the Japanese Exhibition House were shown in the museum's sculpture garden.
One day, my phone rang, and it was one of the curators from the Museum of Modern Art, and they said, "We hear that you all have a Lustron House." And they said they were planning this exhibit for this summer all about the history of prefabricated architecture. They wanted to find a house that was in near mint condition as possible. They wanted the whole building. They wanted the Westchester model, and they needed one that could be easily transported to New York for the exhibit. And as luck would have it, we fit each one of those categories.
It is an unbelievable experience to have a house from Arlington at the Museum of Modern Art. Probably one of the 10 best museums on the planet. Rarely does a county have a piece of work that can be seen in such a museum. As much as we would rather see the house erected in Arlington, second best is being shown to literally thousands of people.
Home Delivery is a two-part exhibition. It's one part building project and one part historical survey of the history of the prefabricated house. Part of the inspiration was revisiting a series of exhibitions that the museum did in the middle of the 20th century with a program called the House in the Garden series, in which full-scale exhibition houses were staged and the public was able to go through them. One of the little-known facts about the House in the Garden series was that a year earlier, in the summer of 1948, the Lustron Corporation was just setting into production.
After the war, the industry that had produced the flying fortresses and the tanks had to be retooled. You no longer had a need for those types of machines, and so the factories that produced it, the employment that it had for steel, for electronics, needed to be used somewhere else. And the idea that the Lustron Corporation had was to utilize that steel, utilize those manufacturing techniques, and to build housing for the people coming home, for the returning veterans. So in 1948, they produced their first houses.
And they actually assembled a full-scale model home on the corner of 52nd Street and 6th Avenue, which is just a block away from the museum. Philip Johnson, who is the curator of architecture and design at that time, is said to have walked by that house every day and reviled it because he said it was low modernism and it was materials that were not suitable to be lived in. They were more suitable for gas stations and roadside restaurants. And so there was a real visceral reaction against the Lustron on behalf of MoMA's curators at the time. And one could interpret his installation of the Breuer House a year later as a reaction to the Lustron. So we thought it would be historically interesting to bring it back and revisit that reaction. I think we would ask them to consider long and hard the viability of Marcel Breuer's design versus something like the Lustron, insofar that the Lustron really had a goal to bring what they thought was good design to a really large public quickly and affordably. Breuer's house was designed as a one-off and was more of a fantasy object for the masses to imagine what it would be like to live in a sort of lush suburban setting with a large modernist house. I got on the phone with the County Preservation Board one day and said, we're looking for a Lustron to install at MoMA. And they were absolutely thrilled. And this was a few weeks before a number of Lustrons was slated to be raised at the Quantico Naval Base right near Arlington. So there was already a sense of urgency about bringing attention to the Lustrons as a sort of emblem of mid-century prefabrication.
And I think it says a lot about Arlington County's preservation ethic, that it thought the building important enough to disassemble and save rather than seeing it go to the landfill. I think it says a lot about Arlington County's willingness to share it with the viewing public, that it has an art aspect to it. And I think that when we get it back home, there'll be another debate as to where we can put it up and have it reused as part of the fabric of Arlington County.
Home delivery will be on exhibit at MoMA through October 20th. So take a trip up I-95 yourself or with a group. You won't regret it.